to the topic of structure, commissioners and portfolios. The very first step that we did is deducted from the political guidelines to define our core priorities. And they are built, as you know, and it's no ranking, around prosperity, security, democracy. These are the overarching topics. And this all happens against a backdrop of competitiveness that we need, competitiveness for the twin transitions, the decarbonization and the digitalization of our economies. I'm emphasizing that because, of course, these topics are also very much intertwined. They are cross-cutting. The whole college is committed to the topic of competitiveness, decarbonization, and digitalization. So this time with this new college, we have kind of dissipated the former relatively rigid stovepipes that we had. And this is one of the main recommendations of the Draghi report: more fluid, more intertwined, more coordination of the different policies. Now, let me briefly introduce, and it's again no ranking, the 6 main topics. First, it's about strengthening our tech sovereignty, our security, and our democracy. For that, we want to build a competitive, decarbonized, and circular economy with a fair transition for all. We will only be able to do that if we design a bold industrial strategy with innovation and investment at its heart. So to a certain extent, it's not preserving the old, but via innovation and investment really embracing the new. We need to boost European cohesion and regions to take everyone along. And for that, we need to support people. We need to develop skills. And all this founded on our excellent social model. Finally, this was a lot looking at the European Union. But of course, we have to ensure that Europe can assert its interests and lead in the world. So the external dimension plays also a very important role. And these priorities are reflected in the titles of the executive vice presidents, which I will present in a moment. There's another principle. The treaty says very clearly each member of the college is equal, and each commissioner has an equal responsibility to deliver on our priorities. That means that all commissioners must work together. And it is in this spirit that each executive vice president will also have a portfolio to focus on, for which they will have to work with other commissioners. So in simple words, what affects security also affects the economy, what affects climate or environment also affects people, and vice versa, the business community, and you can go on with that. This is also the reason why this time we do not have the extra layer of vice presidents. So we have a leaner structure and a more interactive and interlinked structure. Another topic is balance, balance in general, be it gender balance, be it the balance of the different topics, but of course also geography. As you will see, we now have 11 women as candidates for the college that I will present today. That is 40%, a share of 40%. When I received the first nominations, and I looked at the whole pattern and the whole tableau, we were at a point where we had a share of 22% women and 78% men. So you can imagine that this was completely unacceptable. So I worked intensively with the member states, and we were able to improve the share to 40% women and 60% men. And it shows that as much as we have achieved, there is still so much more work to do. And with that in mind, I assigned 6 executive vice presidents The next slide, please. The 6 executive vice presidents. And actually, at the very end, you get the overall tableau with all the names and all the portfolios. So you'll get it all. 6 executive vice presidents. I assigned 4 women and 2 men. So you recall the share of the college is 40% women, 60% men. We flipped this. And we have, as a proposal, 6 executive vice presidents, 4 women, 2 men. If you look at the geographical balance, 3 are from member states that joined before the fall of the Iron Curtain. 3 are from member states that joined after Europe was reunited. From the Baltics, the Nordics, and Eastern Europe. We have ministers and prime ministers, very different backgrounds, with one common goal, and that is to make Europe stronger. So, allow me to introduce them, and please the next slide. The first executive vice president will be Teresa Ribera, responsible for a clean, just, and competitive transition. She will also be responsible for the competition policy. So she has the competition portfolio. She will guide the work to ensure that Europe stays on track for its goals set out in the European Green Deal, and that we decarbonize and industrialize our economy at the same time. Next slide, please. Henna Virkkunen will be the Executive Vice President for Tech Sovereignty, Security and Democracy. She will also be responsible for the portfolio of digital and frontier technologies. I will ask Henna to look at the internal and external aspects of security, but also to strengthen the foundations of our democracy, such as the rule of law, and protect it whenever it comes under attack. Next slide, please. Stéphane Séjourné will be the Executive Vice President for Prosperity and Industrial Strategy. He will also be responsible for the industry, SMEs, and the single market portfolio. He will guide the work to put in place the conditions for our companies to thrive, for investment and innovation, to economic stability and trade and economic security. Next slide, please. Kaja Kallas, as you already know, will be our High Representative and Vice President. We are in an era of geostrategic rivalries and instability. Our foreign and security policy must be designed with this reality in mind, and it must be more aligned with our own interests. I know that I can count on her to bring all this together and be the bridge between our internal and our external policies, and to ensure that we have a geopolitical commission. Next slide, please. I'm very happy to entrust the role of Executive Vice President for People, Skills and Preparedness to Roxana Minzatu. She will have the portfolio responsibility for skills, education and quality jobs and social rights. This is under the umbrella of a union of skills and the European Pillar of Social Rights. She will focus on those areas which are crucial to unite our society. Next slide, please. Raffaele Fitto will be the Executive Vice President for Cohesion and Reforms. He will be responsible for the portfolio dealing with cohesion policy, regional development and cities. We will draw on his extensive experience to help modernize and strengthen our cohesion investments and growth policies. This is the team of Executive Vice Presidents, which will work hand in hand with each other and with all commissioners. Next slide, please. I would like to introduce them all to you. So I need the next slide. Yeah, there we are. We go one by one. I will start here with Maroš Šefčovič. Next slide, please, Maroš Šefčovič. I'm very happy to give him 2 roles. He will be the Commissioner for Trade and Economic Security. This is a new portfolio, which also includes customs policy. I have also entrusted him with a 2nd role, the Commissioner for Interinstitutional Relations and Transparency, and for this 2nd role, he will report directly to me. Next slide, please. Valdis Dombrovskis will also have a double role. He will be the Commissioner for Economy and Productivity. I have also given him the role of Commissioner for Implementation and Simplification. He will there also report directly to me on this part of his work. Next slide, please. Dubravka Šuica will be the Commissioner for the Mediterranean. I'm entrusting her with this new role. She will also be responsible for the wider southern neighborhood. She will work closely with Kaja Kallas and many other commissioners to develop our shared interests with the region, and she will be responsible for the portfolio of demography. Next slide, please. Oliver Vaheli will be the Commissioner for Health and Animal Welfare. He will be responsible for building a European health union and continuing the work of beating cancer and on preventive health. Next slide, please. Wopke Hoekstra will be the Commissioner for Climate, Net Zero and Clean Growth. He will continue to work on implementation and adaptation, on climate diplomacy and decarbonization, and he will also be responsible for taxation. Next slide, please. Andrius Kubilius will be the Commissioner for Defence and Space. He will work on developing the European Defence Union and boosting our investment and industrial capacity. Next slide, please. Marta Kos. It should be noted that the government of Slovenia has suggested Marta Kos as a member of the college. The nomination procedure, which involves the consultation of the National Parliament for a non-binding opinion, is ongoing. She will be Commissioner for Enlargement, also responsible for the Eastern neighborhood, and she will work on supporting Ukraine and continuing the work on reconstruction and support the candidate countries to prepare for their accession. Next slide, please. Josef Sikela will be the Commissioner for International Partnerships. He will lead the important work on our big investment program, Global Gateway, for infrastructure abroad. He will ensure that we develop mutual beneficial partnerships which invest heavily in a common future. Next slide, please. Kostas Kadis will be the Commissioner for Fisheries and Oceans. I count on his experience to help build a resilient, competitive and sustainable sector and present the first European Oceans Pact. Next slide, please. Maria Albuquerque will be the Commissioner for Financial Services and the Savings and Investment Union. This will be vital to strengthen and complete our capital markets union and to ensure that private investment powers and our productivity and powers our innovation. Next slide, please. Hadia Labib will be the Commissioner for Preparedness and Crisis Management. This is another new portfolio which will look at the resilience and preparedness and civil protection beside humanitarian aid. She will therefore be responsible for leading our efforts on crisis management and humanitarian aid, and she will also be responsible for the topic of equality. Next slide, please. Magnus Brunner will be the Commissioner for Internal Affairs and Migration. He will, of course, focus on the implementation of the Pact on Asylum and Migration, but also on strengthening our borders and developing a new internal security strategy. Next slide, please. Jessica Roswall. Jessica Roswall will be the Commissioner for Environment, Water Resilience, and a competitive circular economy. She will have an important job to help preserve our environment and put nature on the balance sheet. She will help develop a more circular, more competitive economy, and she will lead the work on water resilience, which is a big priority for the years that we have ahead of us. Next slide, please. Piotr Serafin will be the Commissioner for Budget, Anti-Fraud and Public Administration. He will also report directly to me, and he will notably focus on preparing the next long-term budget and ensure we have a modern institution to deliver for Europeans. Next slide, please. Dan Jorgensen will be the Commissioner for Energy and Housing. His work will help to bring down energy prices, invest in clean energy, and ensure that we cut our dependencies. He will be the first ever Commissioner for Housing, looking at all the aspects from energy efficiency to investment and construction that define that topic. Next slide, please. Ekaterina Zaharyeva will be the Commissioner for Startups, Research and Innovation. We must put research and innovation, science and technology at the center of our economy. She will help ensure that we invest more and more focused our spending on strategic priorities and groundbreaking innovation. Next slide, please. Michael McGrath. He will be the Commissioner for Democracy, Justice and the Rule of Law. I have entrusted him with the responsibility to take forward the European Democracy Shield. He will also lead our work on the rule of law, anti-corruption and consumer protection. Next slide, please. Apostolos Tzitzikostas will be the Commissioner for Sustainable Transport and Tourism. He is responsible for mobility of goods and people. They are essential sectors for our competitiveness, but also for our transitions for connecting people and driving local economies. Next slide, please. Christoph Hansen will be the Commissioner for Agriculture and Food. He will have the task to bring to life the report and the recommendation of the strategic dialogue on the future of agriculture. And based on the strategic dialogue, he will develop a vision for agriculture and food in the first 100 days of the mandate. Next slide, please. Glenn McAuliffe will be the Commissioner for Intergenerational Fairness, Culture, Youth and Sport. Intergenerational fairness is a cross-cutting topic. It affects all of us, but especially young people. And it is about the right balance in a society, and I have entrusted Glenn to watch over this. Next slide, please. So, the key message is that wherever we come from, whatever our job title, we must all work together. We will have open debates. We are all independent in thought and action. The only guiding star is the European interest. We will all have to take ownership of all what we have agreed in the college. And this is the team that you see now on the screen that I put forward today. On this basis, once the European Parliament has received the official letter from the Council, and of course in agreement with the President of the Commission, then the Parliament may proceed with the formal proceedings for the nomination of the new college always in accordance with the rules of procedure. I thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take your questions now.
Thank you very much. Before we move to your questions, one technical comment. We will be organizing tomorrow morning in Brussels, but also available, of course, on Interaxio, a technical briefing for your more detailed questions on the composition of the college and the portfolios. And secondly, of course, all the relevant information which has been presented will be available on Europa through our dedicated link to the site on the new college. We will now start with some questions. Mark Peperkorn.
Yes, good morning, Mark Peperkorn, Volkskrant. Congratulations with the candidates. My question is, in 2019, you didn't have much time, let's say, to constitute the team because you came there as more or less as a surprise. Do you think, because this time you have more experience, you had more time, and you have also some more political weight, is this more Ursula's team, what we see now?
Well, both commissions are commissions that are very dear to my heart, and of course, they are composed in very different times. So you see that last time the topic of global warming was absolutely top. And this was the reason why I started the European Green Deal. The dominance of this topic is still there, so get me right. It is the major backdrop of all what we are doing. We just have to look at the extreme weather events, the floods and the fires we experienced this summer again. So global warming has an enormous impact, and we have to rise to the challenge to fight global warming. But this time, for example, the topic of security triggered by the Russian war in Ukraine, but also the topic of competitiveness has a much broader much more impact on the composition and the design of the political guidelines, and then, of course, the organization of the college. So it reflects a lot the time we live in.
Please present yourself.
Mojca Širok from the Slovenian radio, national radio and television. How much more complications and delays do you expect in forming your commission because of that little asterisk in front of the Slovenian commissioner candidate? And how do you respond to the accusations that you put a lot of unjustified pressure to the government of Slovenia to change the commissioner candidate, but not also Slovenia, but not also on Slovenian government, but also the government of France? Thank you.
With all member states, there was and is an intensive time of negotiations and discussing. These nominations, that is a process. So when you start, none of us has the full oversight, so we do not know where we finally end. And you have a lot of wishes that are there. As I said, most of the wishes, I would say around 20 member states wanted a strong economic portfolio. We do not have 20 strong economic portfolios. So there you have to discuss with the member states and the competence of the candidate that is put forward how to match it best. To make life more complicated, you also have to include the geographical balance, and you have to include the political affiliation. So it's not easy to put it all together. I'm very grateful for the very constructive work we've done together. I'm confident that the process in Slovenia will lead to a good end. And then, as I said, officially the European Parliament can proceed with the list that then is approved by the Council and put forward by the Council.
Jorge.
Good morning. Here, Madam President. Sorry, it's full house today. Good morning, Jorge Valero with Bloomberg. Two questions first. If you could confirm that you offer to French President Mr. Macron a better portfolio for France if they drop the candidacy of Thierry Breton. And secondly, if you could explain whether the portfolios of Rivera and Oxtra somehow are going to overlap, and if that's the case, who will call the shots?
Question again, please.
Yes, sorry. if the portfolios of Ms. Rivera and Mr. Oxtra sometimes are going to overlap, and if that's the case, who will call the shots? It will be Rivera as Executive Vice President. Thank you.
So first of all, on your specific second question, this goes for all commissioners. We have in the European Commission all executive vice presidents that, as I said, a main principle is coordination, because reality, you cannot put reality in little boxes and separate the different topics from each other. Reality, everything is intertwined and interlinked. And therefore, all the commissioners, all the executive vice presidents have to work very closely together. And of course, there are in all the aspects overlaps, depending on from which angle you look at it. So good coordination, good cooperation is paramount. So the French president has made the decision, you know, after having consulted the new French Prime Minister, Michel Barnier. He has proposed Stéphane Séjourné as France's new candidate. I know Stéphane Séjourné very well from the European Parliament. We've worked very well together, and I'm convinced that we will make a great European Commissioner.
Angela.
Yes, good morning. Thanks for the opportunity. If you can explain the portfolio which goes to Raffaele Fitto, the Italian commissioner, if you can explain what does it mean, the part about reforms, as he's a politician from a party who has always been against the reforms of the European Union towards major integration. Thanks. And if it includes also the recovery fund portfolio. Thank you.
So it is the same cohesion and reforms as it was in the mandate that is still ongoing. And in general, every decision for all the budget that we have is in the very end a collegial one. The whole of college decides. It's not singular commissioners who decide on disbursement. It's the whole of college decision that is for any topic and for any disbursement of European budget. So on this one, very clear.
Raffaella.
Raffaella Scheidreiter for the Austrian TV and Radio. President, could you please explain your choice assigning the migration and asylum package to the Austrian candidate Magnus Brunner, who was so far or is so far the finance minister? Has it something to do with the fact that Austria very often openly criticized the EU for being too slow when it comes to asylum and migration? And maybe has it something to do with the fact that in Austria a right-wing party is heading the polls for the national elections? Thank you.
So first of all, for all the candidates is paramount they will be commissioners. This does not mean that any candidate will be a technical expert in detail in the topic, but it is that commissioners have the political responsibility. Magnus Brunner has a law background, which is, I think, very important in this case. He's done an excellent work as a minister, has shown the competence to lead and to work in depth in a topic, and therefore I'm convinced that he will master the file excellently.
Thank you. Sir.
Hello, David Pastor, Euractiv Czechia. I'd like to ask about Mr. Sikela, because he was discussed to have an energy portfolio, he was discussed to have an industrial portfolio, then the trade portfolio. Neither of that he's getting international partnerships. So if you can explain like why, what's behind this decision, and maybe just to clarify it for the Czech people, like what does that mean and why he didn't get that portfolio he was supposed to get according to his profession?
Josef Sikela gets a portfolio that includes all of what you've just mentioned, and even more. International partnerships is a huge portfolio. It includes Global Gateway, and you know Global Gateway is a 300 billion investment program for infrastructure abroad. And just to give you some examples what we've been working on, we work, for example, intensively with African countries to have infrastructure investment in renewable energy. Classical topic for Global Gateway, or critical raw materials, where we invest so that the value chain stays in the country, and we then have a deal and an agreement with the country for accessing the critical raw materials. Global Gateway finances a lot. You all are familiar with the topic of vaccine manufacturing. For example, that a global gateway supported and supports in Rwanda, but also in Senegal. It is the establishment of infrastructure, that is manufacturing of vaccine mRNA production. And these are only 3 examples that show the width of the investment portfolio and the enormous importance it has on our economy, the prosperity and competitiveness of the European Union. Because without renewable energy, without critical raw materials, without health, it's going to be difficult to be competitive in the future world.
Yeah, the gentleman. Please present yourself.
Alessandro Cisilin, Agenzia Stampa Area, Italy. Congratulations. You just met the Conference of Presidents. What about Mr. Fitto? Did you feel a strong opposition or not by the Green Liberals and Socialists to his position as Vice President?
So first of all, Italy is a very important country and one of our founding members. And this has to reflect also in the choice. What I also did, I looked at the composition here in the European Parliament. And the European Parliament has 14 vice presidents. 2 of them are from ECR. So I think to learn from the composition of the European Parliament and deduct to the composition of the Commission is a smart way to move forward. The importance of Italy is reflected in the portfolio and the executive vice president, and I think the balance is also very well kept.
No, sorry.
So I think you have to ask them about their position because we were exchanging views, but of course you have to ask them about their specific position.
Apologies. If you don't mind, I will give the floor. Thomas.
Thomas Mayer at der Standard Austria. Mrs. President, you talked to the Conference of Presidents, and I'm sure about the start of the new Commission. So we will have elections in America at the beginning of November. Is it still your objective to start the 1st of November? And how reasonable is that you can reach that?
I think all of Europe wants the new Commission to start as soon as possible, but we also have to do all the due diligence, the hearing procedures that are necessary. It is for me impossible to foresee the length of this process, and I know that the Parliament is working very hard to be as fast and as precise as possible. So insofar, we have a Commission in place. We should not forget that is working hard on all the topics, and we are all working very hard to have the new Commission as soon as possible.
Yeah, okay, did I move up? Yes, the lady there, yeah. Your mic, please. Yes. Press the mic. No, you need to press the mic.
Sorry, thank you. Our Commissioner, Henna Virkkunen, at her responsibility is technological sovereignty. So what does that mean? What does she has to do now?
Yeah, for example, she is responsible, for example, for the huge topic of digitalization and digital infrastructure. And you know that this is a precondition for being at the cutting edge of research and development, being in a pole position for the clean tech and the digital tech of the future. And these are the main drivers of competitiveness. Of course, it also includes the whole topic of security. So if we look at the Defense Commissioner, who is reporting to Henna Virkkunen, I'm very clear about the fact that there are competences of the member states, like the composition of the troop, the missions, the deployment, the structure of the troop. But on the European level is responsible for the single market and the industry. And looking at defense industry, here too, the strengthening of the defense industrial base will be important. We all know, because of the bitter experience of the Russian war in Ukraine, how crucial here too cutting-edge technologies are. So the development of security, but also the tech sovereignty is in the portfolio, therefore, for Henna Virkkunen.
Yeah.
Yes, hi, Karen Axelsen from the Danish daily Politiken. As I understand it, the energy portfolio has been assigned to Denmark for quite some time. Why is that? Why Denmark? He's clearly not a woman, so why exactly Denmark? Thanks. And then
he's an excellent minister for energy with a broad experience, wide political skills, very convincing in the presentation, very good reputation. So many topics speak for him, and I think also he has experience from the energy crisis, how important it is to build an energy union with respect to the competence of the member states, of course, to have their own energy mix, but that we have a very clear dedication to go to decarbonized and low-carbon technologies for the future, to create independence of import of fossil fuels. We want to reduce the impact of fossil fuels. We want to reduce our dependency of foreign fossil fuels. So all these topics are in the agenda. Then, of course, energy efficiency plays a big role, and the whole topic of interconnection within the European Union. We know how crucial that was for us to make it through the tough winter with the energy crisis, to have worked very hard on interconnections and supply, also reverse supply, in the European Union. But it's the bare minimum that we have. We have to extend that much, much more. A last point is, for example, that we also have the joint purchasement of energy, which is the procurement of energy, which is one of the top topics to increase the market power of the European Union on the global energy market. So you see a lot of topics where he is very well suited for.
Rob Herbout for VRT, Belgian television. Could you explain why you have given the portfolio preparedness and equality to Hadja Labib, and would you have chosen otherwise if Belgium had nominated Didier Reinders, the present Commissioner for Justice?
So Hadja Labib has a solid experience on foreign affairs, and the preparedness portfolio is the classical linked portfolio to humanitarian aid as we know it. It is widened because we have seen that humanitarian aid is not only very much needed globally, but that we also see the effect that on our continent, as I just mentioned, the followings of the global warming, the climate crisis, produce much more flooding, much more heavy and intense weather events, much more wildfires. So the preparedness for these extreme events also has to be there, and the wider preparedness for crisis management. And I think with the portfolio that she has, reflecting also the political career she has had, she's the right candidate.
Yes, Lady Lydia.
Maja Cerkovnik, Slovenian Press Agency. Maja Cerkovnik, Slovenian Press Agency. Could you confirm that your letter to Slovenian Prime Minister Robert Golob outlining your objections to his initial nominee, Tomaž Vesel, was released to Slovenian Parliament?
I don't get it acoustically, I'm sorry.
Okay. Could you confirm that your letter to Slovenian Prime Minister Robert Golob outlining your objections to his initial nominee, Tomaž Vesel, was released to Slovenian Parliament? What's in this letter, and did you get any response from the Slovenian Parliament? Thank you.
The Slovenian Parliament has asked, actually a committee has asked for this letter, and therefore we have released that letter because it is very clear and self-explaining. So it's a very transparent process.
The gentleman at the back. Yeah. You, yes.
Good morning. I'm from the Portuguese national television. The Union of Capital Markets has been proposed in 2014. Do you think Maria Luísa Albuquerque can achieve that?
Maria Albuquerque will be excellent on that portfolio because, as you know, she has a vast experience as finance minister, but also an enormous experience in the private sector. So she combines everything. She knows how difficult the political field is, but she also knows that the private sector, for private capital or private investment, we have to get it on board. And this will be possible for a deep and liquid capital markets union. Yes, it is difficult, without any question, but we also know that the pressure is mounting that we finally get it done. Because if you look at the figures that the European Central Bank is giving us, we are losing every year 470 billion euros of investment that is not done in the European Union because of lack of capital market union. As I said, European Central Bank figures. So there's a huge urgency and pressure now to get it done, and she's absolutely the right person with a vast knowledge on this topic.
Daniel.
Oui, merci beaucoup, Daniel Weber, pour la radio publique luxembourgeoise. Nicolas Schmitt, the leading candidate of the Socialists, is not among the nominees. Apparently, you did not offer an important position for him to the Luxembourgish Prime Minister. Last week, the Socialists were expressing a warning. Are you taking up a fight with them? What feedback did you get from this side? And why did you attribute agriculture to Luxembourg, a country that does not really play a major role in this sector? Thank you.
So if I take your last sentence, and this is very important, I think, for the overall composition of the college, the commissioners are not the representatives of their countries. They are the representatives of Europe and our common cause. Therefore, disrespective from whatever country or member state you're coming, you can play an important role. Otherwise, it would not be the right approach for a European common cause. Now, having said that, the treaty is also very clear. The member states, that's the governments, decide on the nomination of their candidates and the choice of their candidates. I can discuss with them, but in the very end, they decide. And the decision of Luxembourg is Christoph Hansen. Christoph Hansen has a background of knowledge for agriculture, but again, it's independent of the country itself because he has to serve the whole of the European Union and the whole of agriculture. And for him, the basis will be the strategic dialogue, where I'm very, very glad that there's a unanimous agreement of all the different stakeholders in the strategic dialogue that have put forward this report. This will also be the basis on which we will then present the vision forward in agriculture within the first 100 days of the mandate.
Thank you. President Michael McGrath has been allocated the Justice and Democracy portfolio, yet the Irish government was seeking an economic portfolio. He's a former finance minister. Why did you choose him for that particular role, and will he be responsible for GDPR, and if not, why not? Thank you.
So this goes very well with the answer I just gave, that commissioners are responsible for the overall topic in the European Union. And as you said, a strong economic portfolio, I think 20 member states at least ask for a strong economic portfolio. It is impossible to have 20 commissioners on strong economic portfolios. Michael McGrath has an excellent track record, and he has experience in leading ministries, so working his way through political questions. The commissioners are not the technical expert, they are the political leaders. The rule of law is a very important topic for his political affiliation Renew, and we share all the importance of the rule of law. He will be responsible for consumer rights, for example. So all topics where I think he will excel and where I think this is an important and highly respected portfolio.
Susanna.
We will have the meeting tomorrow morning.
Thank you. Here.
Susanna Freixes, here, present.
Here. Sorry.
Sitting right next to Tony.
Okay. So still on Portugal, if I may, two quick questions. One is you mentioned the knowledge of Mrs. Maria Luísa Albuquerque, and her experience of the private sector, but aren't you afraid that this might be a problem during hearings, since there is also a question of revolving doors after she left the Ministry of Finances? And also, as you might know, in Portugal, it's a very critical situation regarding forest fires. You already tweeted yesterday sending more airplanes, but the question is also the European Union able or willing to help in which concern the EU Solidarity Fund? Thank you.
The use of?
EU Solidarity Fund.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So indeed, two very different questions. Indeed, the devastating wildfires. Portugal has triggered the civil protection mechanism. This is basically the solidarity of all of Europe to support as much as possible in kind, at the moment being of crisis, the member state. But we will have to sit down also with the affected countries with the floodings and discuss how we can support them in repair and reconstruction. And this topic will be of growing importance. So this is something where we really have together as Europeans to decide how we can manage and finance the growing need of adaptation and repair that we will see in the years to come. I think the experience, not only on the political side, but also on the side of, for example, business or in agriculture or in the banking system, on the private sector, is very important, because all our legislation should reflect the interest of all Europeans and have the different views of the different stakeholders. So I think it strengthened the position of Maria Albuquerque.
Fires, President? The fires?
I just said it.
Oh, sorry. Okay.
You did not listen to me.
Sorry. I think I got confused looking at the journalists. Thank you very much. This brings us to the end of our press conference. Thank you for your attention and see you tomorrow at the technical briefing.
All right. Thank you.